Yeah, okay, we're all good. Did you have a question, Carolyn? Baba, is it okay if we take one
Yes,
question
yeah, yeah,
before we
yeah.
get started? Yeah,
I'm very flexible. Whatever questions, go right ahead.
great.
I was wondering if Baba Luaye has ever refused to give like the treatment for some reason, not to an individual, but to like a community, maybe.
So that's a very good question. That's why I mean we're going to segue into the whole aspect of Ifa and the geomancy of Ifa and divination, because in order to work with Baba Luaye, especially in the Yoruba side and as well as the Fon side, Baba Luaye many times speaks through Ifa. As the system of divination, as do all the Orishas, but Baba Luaye especially. And usually when you're facing any situation, let's say a town is facing disease or problem, the divination is done. And in that divination, when you're facing that problem, immediately when asked through Ifa, it does Babaloye need something? Now, if Babaloye is a very stern, very harsh Orisha, as Professor indicated at the beginning, he's one of the harsher energies. So if he feels that he's been disrespected, or if he feels that a particular community has violated the natural law, violated the earth, violated his taboos or anything of that, or disrespected or disregarded him, there are situations where Babaloye may either exact a very heavy etutu, or sacrifice or ebbo, or may basically say this is otonolowa. In other words, the town is facing the consequences of their own disrespect or bad behavior or crimes in some ways, right?
Yeah, so remember, everything is kind of about relationship, right? And so if your relationship is out of order, then you experience the negative side of things. And that's just kind of the way the world works. But if you get the relationship in good order, then you experience benevolence. And that's the way it is with human beings. That's the way it is with cosmic forces, with the Orisha, with the deities. Yeah, they all kind of seem to follow that same pattern. So it's yeah, even though he's harsh, I wouldn't necessarily say he's vindictive, petty.
Hmm.
It's really up to
No,
us how, the type of response you get is entirely based on the individual, the community, the group. How you approach him determines what kind of response you get. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. But again, he's not an Orisha or Vodun, if you will, that you can trifle with. It is definitely there are Orishas that, as they say in Spanish, te pasan la mano. They will let you, they will give you a free pass, or give you a break and all that. Baba Lueye is not one of them.
Yeah.
Baba Lueye, no, 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 no. You have to be above board, and you have to be very, very strict in terms of observance and doing what Ifa says he wants, and so forth, right? So, um, but definitely, it's as we go into the presentation, it's definitely something to consider as one of the major powers of the Ifa-Orisa, Essini Bile Orisha sort of pantheon, and so forth. This is one of the major forces, right? So,
I'm ready to go whenever you
Professor,
would like.
yeah,
Yeah.
Professor, if you since if you could go to slide number 19,
Okay.
we'll just go to that.
Uh, let's
Sorry.
see. Is this
Yeah, right after Baba Luaye. Yeah, yeah,
right after
yeah. One more. There we
this
go.
one? Yeah.
So, um, so welcome everybody again. I've been a Babalao now was initiated 14 years ago, and I head up a community here in Georgetown in Ontario. But I basically our community extends into different parts of the world. I've worked with Bokonos from Dahomey, Babalaos from different parts of Nigeria, from Oshogbo, from Oyo, from Ile-Ife, and as well as a lot of Afro-Cuban Babalaos from Cuba and other parts of the States and so forth. Um, and we practice Ifa on a daily basis. And one thing I'm very grateful to the professor for giving us this opportunity so that you as a class and people who are studying this from an academic perspective know that Ifa and what you're learning is a living tradition. And if many would say Ifa is not a religion in itself, but it's really a spiritual belief system and a way of life. If you come away with anything else, at least come away with that knowledge that Ifa is really a way to guide or to steward your life, and that of a community, that of a country, a town, and so forth, in order to be able to accomplish both the individual's destiny, defined by Odie, which I'll get into, but also the collective destiny or collective mission of a town, of a community, of a country. Within Ifa, again, and Orisha, there are four major pillars, which anchor the belief system. Number one is Ifa believes in the Almighty Creator, Olodumare, which has many different Eledumare, Edumare, and at the beginning of creation of the universe, Akamara. Um, and that spirit is basically all powerful, all knowing. And what he did was he spread or allowed his ashe and the responsibilities of creation to be undertaken by different divine beings or Irumale or Imale. So spiritual beings, divine beings that basically took on that responsibility. Um, the second major pillar is Ori, the concept of Ori or destiny. Ori, it represents, in more Western terms, the inner spirit, or some would say the soul each of us have, which is a sliver or a piece of the divine creator Olodumare. It is the part of the divine Olodumare that is in each and every one of us. It is also the receptacle that holds destiny. And within Ifa, every sentient being, every aspect of nature that has consciousness, because in Ifa, we believe that everything from the plants to the rivers to the mountain, everything has a consciousness. And human beings, especially with Ori, have a consciousness and a purpose or a mission that they choose in heaven before they come to earth. And so a lot of divination, or pretty much the central part of divination, is to understand and to have that dialogue between Ifa, Orumila, and Ifa, the system of divination, and one's Ori, in order to determine and to remember what the person chose in heaven under the holy order of Obedi, where we say that every soul bows before Lodumare before it comes down to earth to choose its mission or objectives on earth, or what the lessons it needs to learn, the life it needs to lead in order to accumulate that wisdom and knowledge at the spiritual level. Also, third pillar, very important, is everything begins and ends with Egun. And Egun represents the ancestors, the spirits of the dead, spirits of human beings, or people who came before us, who have passed and transitioned into the spirit world. And that Egun Alagba Lagba, that those ancients that have walked the earth well before us, from which we descend from on earth, and where already has put us into those lineages and those families, is essential in order for us to commune and communicate with Orisha and other spirits. In Cuba, we say the term in Irete Kutan, Iku lo biocha. It is through death that we birth the Orisha. The concept again that every human being is a soul that, when married with their Orisha laboratorio, their Orisha that protects their head, can become an Orisha in and of themselves. Orisha themselves, and Irumale, as I said, are Irumale represents divine beings, which in many other cultures, like in Judaism and Christianity or in Islam, would be likened to spiritual beings like angels, archangels, that type of entity. And Orisha represents, the moment we use the term Orisha, it represents a spirit that began in many cases its existence as a divine being, but because of the cosmic plan of Olodumare and in fulfilling the roles of creation, we're told or decided to take on human form and to inhabit a human body in order to accomplish great things on earth, in order to fulfill the plans of creation, and then sometimes returning in order to help fulfill destiny or changes in the earthly realm, in what we call Aye. So we all come originally from Oru, the spirit world, the world of the invisible world, and Ifa talks a lot about as a geomancy that travel, that journey from the Oru to Aye. And that's why it is a geomancy. And that's why the Odus of Ifa, which is the 256 Odus of Ifa or codex, are every time that a Babalao does Dafa or uses the Ikins, the holy palma, to divine, he marks those Odus in the sand, meaning that we are calling on those 256 stars, if you will, or consciousness of Odu Ifa to come down to speak to us on earth, and then share with us either wisdom and messages and so forth. Let me know if there's any question, if I'm going too fast or too, just let me know. I'm counting on you, Professor. Let me know if anybody has questions there.
Okay, no, I think we're doing really well. Would you like me to go
Okay.
to the next slide?
Yes, please. Yeah. So again, destiny. One of the things about Ifa and divination with Ifa, geomantic divination, is that Ifa has a geomancy, has a method of communication which is bidirectional. I often say the difference between Ifa-Orìṣà as a belief system, a spiritual belief system, and any other or many other belief systems is the fact that, in other faiths you pray and you look for miracles or look for dreams, or you're kind of guessing whether your prayer has been answered or will be answered, or if it was heard or not heard. With Ifa, Ifa is an ongoing systematic communication with the spirit world. And Ifa itself, the 256 Odus represent the cumulative knowledge, experience, and wisdom of both the ancestors on earth, as defined by the sign of Yekuno Kanran, but also the wisdom and the knowledge of Olodumare, the creator. That is why Orunmila is referred to as Enikeji Olodumare, second in command to the creator, Olodumare, because he is the one that is witness to destiny and witness to the plans or the designs of Olodumare for every sentient being and for every aspect of creation. That's why he's called Eleri Ipin. Eleri Ipin, the one who saw destiny. In terms of destiny, in terms as it refers to the human condition, humankind, destiny is defined into three pillars. Again, Akuneyan represents the part of destiny which you, in the sign of Bedi, bowed before Olodumare to choose the destiny, to choose what you wanted to learn on earth and accomplish on earth, the values and virtues, and the aspects you wanted to accomplish here while you were here. It represents your mission, if you will. Akunlegba represents the tools and the things you need in order to accomplish that destiny, and also encapsulates the concept of free will, the ability or the final outcome, which can vary or shift from left to right, from Ide to Ibi, which I'll talk about, is can be influenced by Akunlegba and Iwa, or one's character. It says many times one's character represents one's destiny, because character, if you have good character, you perform divination, you perform ebbo, sacrifice, and you can modify and even beautify or enhance your destiny, or you can destroy it, right? And then Ayanmo represents the part of our destiny which normally cannot change, such as race, family, sex, parents, the fixed conditions, if you're tall, if you're short, If you're, any physical aspect that you really cannot easily change or move. Um, Throughout this interaction with Ayanmo, Akulegba, Akuneyan, Ifa's conversation with Yorodi, every time you sit down for consultation, or Babalao does Dafa or does Idafa, which is with the Opele, the divining chain, um, that person can modify. Ifa tells them, are you in balance? Or are you out of balance with your destiny? Are you following in the steps that you were told and you chose in heaven, or have you gone completely off the rails? And it provides the advice, which is as important as the sacrifice that a person should follow. Because to do sacrifice or to do offerings and not to follow the advice is a wasted effort. Vice versa, to just do the changes in attitude can have some result, but limited impact sometimes, because you need sometimes that the help of the Orisha or the help of Ifa in order to be able to overcome the inertia or the challenges or blockages that the person may have. And the whole point of Ifa's consultation is not to instill fear or dread or to chastise a person, but simply to help them with the advice and the tools and the prescription to be able to correct their situation or help reinforce the good that they may be in at the time. If you can go to the next slide.
We have
So
time
if
for
you
a
can play,
question.
sure.
All right. I'm just curious. What's the picture that's in the corner of all the slides? The bottom one.
Oh, yeah. So she's asking about the picture of Ishu down on the bottom.
Yes. Whenever I do any presentation, anything which has to do with technology, I always put Eshu. Okay, Eshu is the messenger. He is the divine messenger and also policeman that both communicates or transmits the messages from Aye to Orun and from Orun to Aye, and also among human beings, and also is the one responsible for taking Ebbo up to heaven and bringing down the blessings and communicating with the other Orisha that have been offered to make effect change. So I always, Ifa is really very dependent on Eshu. It says that Ifa Orumila is the best friend of Eshu, and Eshu is the best friend of Ifa. So out of respect, I always, whenever it's a presentation, I always put Eshu or some little thing I represent Eshu in my slides or in my presentation.
So this is an Okmo Ifa, I get an Ifa divining board. I'm just
Mhm.
showing them this and how on these Okmo Ifa, you always have the face of Ishu at the top. It helps you with orienting.
That's right.
And in the work that I've done with the Babalawo in Nigeria, you invoke Ishu and you can even feed Ishu, right, with Ishu's mouth here. When you're offering Eba or sacrifices, offerings, you speak to Ishu, you can invoke Ishu, and you can even begin to feed Ishu there. It's not a real Okma Ifa or divining board if you can't find the Ishu up there at the top part. Sometimes Ishu is also at multiple different points, but
Yeah.
usually you'll find one Ishu at the top, and that's how you know that's the part of the board that faces the Babalawo. You always have to be looking at Ishu. You don't get one,
Yeah.
you don't get Ifa without Ishu. They're kind of the two different sides of that divine communication.
Yeah, that's right. Eshu is essential for anything which is communication, um, and carrying your messages faithfully to Odun and from Odun to. He also acts. It's also said that Eshu is at the top of the Opon for two reasons. One, because the Opon Ifa represents is an instrument where we actually put the Iye Rosun or Iye, which is the dust of the Rosun tree or other dust, depending on the divination of the Ebbo. But the Opon Ifa represents the earth. It is a representation of or microcosm of the earth. So anything we mark on the Opon Ifa is basically representing that we're affecting that change on this plane, on the Aye. Eshu's on the top because he's the witness. He's the one that keeps the babalao, or should keep the babalao in check, and sort of like looking at us and don't be naughty, do what you're supposed to do, and don't cut corners and all that. He's there to basically support what the babalao is doing, but also keep the communication clear and to make sure that there's no other untoward influence affecting the babalao or his work.
Papa Legba that we did. Remember our first session, Papa Legba was the Papa Legba is the Haitian equivalent. That's the formation in the Haitian cosmology.
Papa, of course, means like father Legba. Father Legba, the word Legba comes from the word Elegbara in Yoruba, which means he who has power. The wielder of power, the wielder of the big stick. So that's right. So it speaks to his importance and his influence on earthly and as well as spiritual or heavenly matters, right?
Do we have question or time for another question, or would you prefer to take them
My
all?
time is your time. So I'm more important for me that everybody participate and that they get the best out of this. So go right ahead.
I think it was Ayanmo, the third pillar of things you can't change. Is it generally agreed upon throughout the tradition what these things are, or does it vary, or just what's the deal with that?
Were you able to hear the question?
Yeah. So again, you one have to understand the Ifa is something that's been practiced, and I have one slide has been practiced for thousands of years. The basic concepts of what the human being, what defines a human being, and what can change or not change within the traditional systems, whether it be in Nigeria, in Benin, and so forth, is that in terms of the physical attributes, right? Physical attribute when you're born, and that's the key thing when you first come into the earth, right? The things that normally won't change is if you're born male or female, that normally won't change from birth itself. If you are white or black or Chinese or Japanese or whatever ethnicity you have, whatever land you were born, you can't be born again. In other words, you came into to the earth at a particular location, a particular culture, a particular race. That's how you were. Your destiny chose for you to come in. You cannot re-choose your mother and father because it was the semen and the ovula, the egg, which gave birth to that or allow that spirit to transition from the spirit world over the three rivers into this world. So those are traditionally what Ifa sees as the things that don't change, right? Does that help?
I think I'm not sure why, but I wasn't able to play the video, the UNESCO video. When I tried, it just takes us to the next slide.
Oh, so I mean, that's fine. There might be something there.
Yeah. Yeah, so that if I try to click on it, yeah, it just brings us to the next slide. And
Right click on the right click. Can you right click on the video itself to see the URL?
Yeah.
Because you're in presentation mode, maybe?
Yeah,
Maybe
let
it
me
didn't take the.
try to get out of presentation mode and yeah, see if that will allow us to.
Yeah, you're being blocked, so you have to enable the content. That's why.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
there we
enable.
go.
There we go. Now, if you go back, it should let
us.
you. Yeah.
All right, let's see here. There we go. Okay.
The Ifa divination system.
Oh. Okay, now hopefully this will work now. There we go.
The Ifa divination system, which makes use of an extensive corpus of texts and mathematical formulae, is practiced among Yoruba communities and by the African diaspora in the Americas and the Caribbean. The word Ifa refers to the mystical figure Ifa or Orunmila, regarded by the Yoruba as the deity of wisdom and intellectual development, in contrast to other forms of divination in the region that employ spirit mediums. Ifa divination does not rely on a person having a oracular powers, but rather on a system of signs that are interpreted by a diviner, Ifa priest or Babalawo, literally the priest's father. The Ifa divination system is used whenever an important individual or collective decision has to be made. The Ifa literary corpus, called Odu, consists of 256 parts, subdivided into verses called Esse, whose exact number is unknown, as they are constantly increasing. 800 essays per Odu. Each of the 256 Odu has its specific divination signature, which is determined by the Babalawo using sacred palm nuts and a divination chain. The Esse, which are considered the most important part of Ifa divination, are chanted by the priests in a poetic language. The Esse reflect Yoruba history, language, beliefs, worldview, and contemporary social issues. The knowledge of Ifa has been preserved within Yoruba communities and handed down through Ifa priests.
So there you go. So as the video speaks to, the divination system is based, Ifa's divination system is based on basically 256 signs that are comprised of combinations of the 16 primary signs, which are from Eyobe, Oyekume, Iworime, Idime, Irosome, Onrime, Obalame, Okanranme, Ogundame, Osame, Ikame, Otrupome, Oturame, Ireteme, Osheme, Ofume, Oragun. And it is believed that, again, those 16 Odus made it among themselves to create an entire system of 256 signs, which each Odu Vifa comprises, by some of my counts, at least hundreds of different essay fa, or different aspects or variations of the sign that tells different stories, different aspects of that Odu, and in its experience and the experience of the Orishas and the human beings on Earth, as well as in heaven, depending on the type of reading that they went through, they suffered through, in order to basically be able to divine and to ascertain what is the situation a person is dealing with currently, what they've dealt with in the past. In other words, what they came with from the past and what they're going to face in the future. depending on the reading, on the Ifá reading, once you tell Ifá what period of time and who the individual is you're consulting, Ifá will respond with the Odu Ifá by casting the chain or doing the dafa or pulling the signs with the palm nuts in order to tell the story and the narrative of what that person is facing or going through, and how whether they're, as we said earlier, are they in balance or are they out of balance. And the idea of Ifá is always to bring the person back into alignment, right? And it brings us a concept of the concept of morality, like being good or being bad, or doing one thing versus another. One thing about Ifá's divination and each person's destiny is that it is unique to each individual. So what may be, for instance, taboo or inappropriate for one person may be appropriate and required for another, or a particular point in time. Ifá deals with again maintaining that natural and spiritual balance, and helping the person accomplish their destiny on Earth, to avoid problems or challenges or illness or death or tragedy on Earth, right?
Yeah,
And
Junior, want to ask a question?
Yeah, I do. Hi, I'm wondering if there's any significance to the they're called Odun, the symbols.
The Odu.
If there's any significance of the particular sequence that they're shown in here on the screen, because there's a curious similarity that I'm seeing between this and I Ching.
Yeah.
In I Ching, there's
yeah,
the unbroken lines and the
Yeah.
number.
so that's an excellent question. And the I Ching system has some elements of similarity, because, for instance, within Ifá, the different Odus are termed either feminine or masculine, almost like a yin and yang, like one or the other. And they also have to deal with the different elements, right? And uh, within Afro-Cuban, many Babalaos say that the I Ching was, say, a primitive, a very old or piece of Ifá's divination, that was left in that part of the world. And there are apataki, or stories, for instance, where Orumila and also Ajaguna, the Orisha, which is associated with Obatala, one of the avatars of Obatala, had traveled to the Far East and had, began to teach or impart the wisdom and knowledge of Ifá in those areas, but then subsequently had to leave that area, and was only able to impart a part of the knowledge, or part of the wisdom of the system. So, true or not, but there are definitely many parallels and many aspects that are similar, though Ifá is much broader, because Ifá has 256 signs compared to a more limited set of hexagrams within the I Ching. And as well as, although the I Ching has a fairly broad set of interpretations, whether it would be changing lines or no changing lines, which are somewhat similar in some concepts to Ifá, but it's the interpretation set is more limited. Like, to give you an example, Ifá, the divination system was, for hundreds of years, was basically transmitted orally, primarily orally. That's why in the Yoruba, they relied on poetry and stories through poetry, so that they could more easily retain the memory of the different variations or essay Ifá that compose each sign, and be able to pass it on from one generation to the next. Each also town and village, had different pieces of, or different essay Ifá associated, although the characteristics may be the same of what the general message of the Odu is in each town and village. But again, it was all oral. But now, if we look at, in the last 100 years, the current encyclopedias that have been built basically by codifying or writing Ifa, but also the patakin, and the patakin structure of storytelling is derives from in Cuba derives from more the fon, the Dahomey in Benin, because they relate their narratives about the stories of an Odu by telling a fable or a parable. Not always poetic in nature as the Yoruba is, but like having some memory aids to remember the story, and like essentially as we teach children in other cultures with fables and stories, a story has a lot of power. The stories are told from one generation to another, as well as in the indigenous belief systems of North America. Um, but that encyclopedia right now represents the if we pull all the documents together, would represent the equivalent of 5 or 6 Bibles and 4 Qurans in terms of the amount of data that is basically recorded for each Odu Vifa, and with all the different essay, tans, and so forth. So, just to create a striking comparison in terms of the the thoroughness and the extent, the vastness of the knowledge that Ifa encapsulates, and has been able to preserve for thousands of years.
Any other questions before we? Okay, well, would you like me to go to the next slide?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'm just going to quickly go to the next slide. So actually, if we can go, because I skipped the order a little bit, if we can go to the tools of the Babalao, just 2 slides
yeah.
before,
Mhm.
just so again, because you showed the Opon Ifa. So for a Babalao, in terms of the Fa divination system, the Babalao has different tools that have different meanings and significance, both in the Afro-diasporic, but also in among the Yoruba, in terms of Isheshe, Esinibile Orisha, and Ifa in Nigeria, and as well in the Fon and the in Benin, and also in other parts of Togo and Ghana. So one of the things again is the importance of the ate meaning a representation of the ground, which is where Babalao usually will, and you saw in the video, will throw the divining chain on the ate to signify the action of marking the Odu on the earth. Then you have the Oponifa. In this case, in this picture, the Opon is square, and the square is used in some parts of Nigeria, but mostly in Benin. It's another representation of the earth, but they prefer a square sort of opon. The ajere is where the ikins are kept, the sacred palm nuts that, as shown in the picture of the Babalao divining. Uh, and that is the tool, the instrument. It is said that when Orumila left the earth, Orumila left the palm nuts as the main medium or tool for Babalaos on earth to be able to still communicate with him when he returned to the spirit world. Some say he returned to the depths of the ocean when he went with Olokun. Um, and the Igbo is very important because the Igbo um, represents uh, the different elements or items that that help the Babalao to divine and to be able to connect with the person's Odi. So it could be different, like a stone, a piece of bone, a piece of ceramic. As an example, these are just examples. These are my own. Um, the ojo de buey, what we call it in Spanish, seashell. And these objects, 2 of them are placed. The ojo way, or and the other object is used for the person being consulted to shake their hands and separate. And based on how the sign comes down in terms of order of seniority, the Babala will ask for the right hand or the left hand. That action of the person shaking with their hands and the Babalao casting with either the divining chain or casting with the palm knot represents the communication, the open channel of divination between Ifa and Orumila and that person's Ori. And basically allows the to know, or answer various questions throughout the divination, and also to the ultimate question: is the person in Ire or in balance, or in a Yewo or a Sobo or Ibi if they're out of balance? The Opele again is the Ifa divining chain. It is basically what allows a Babalao to be able to divine more quickly, and for matters that are important but not necessarily of a life and death importance. And the opele can be constructed in many different ways. So it can be made from the shells of coconut. It can be made from the opele seed, which is an actual seed. It can be made from bone. It can be made from metal. The choice of the opele, or the type of sea, or the type of plate that's used is partly a decision made by the Babalao, and also his Oduvifa, in terms of how he wishes to communicate, or which symbol he wishes to use. The Ada Ifa represents Babalao's ability, and the Ada is a sword or a blade with a bell at the bottom, which is basically the Babalao's ability to sacrifice, and represents his tool for sacrifice or doing sacrifice, but also to call the Orisha, call the Ifa itself. The Irofa is usually made out of an antler, and that is used in especially Benin, but mostly in Afro-Cuban diaspora, and is used for handling the ebbo, and for basically calling on the Orisha to manipulate the ebbo, which can be composed of different ingredients or elements, so that Babalao does not have direct hands on that ebbo. The irukere, the fly whisk, is basically a symbol used to, and there are different ones, some very elaborate and all that, to basically not just to keep the flies away, but the idea, and this is a tie with Babaluaye, because it said that one of the messengers of Babaluaye is the fly, and flies, and as well as mosquito and other tend to bring disease, right? And with disease, they say Babaloaye messages, or is the foreshadowing to death. Because if disease is left untreated, if disease is serious enough, it leads to eventually to person's demise or death. And if I said that, the only prerequisite for death is to be alive, but you usually go through disease first, unless you have sudden death. But this is used to basically ward off death, and also to ward off any negative energy that might be around the Babalao, not just flies, or the person being consulted, or the person receiving ebbo. So this is a very important instrument. Eshu, you'll see that in that particular case, there's an actual Eshu drawn on the tiny little oponifa, but there's also an Eshu, which is usually always present in divination. In the Yoruba, it can take a form of, small or large wood or cement. But again, Eshu is always present. This Eshu is my Eshu Odara. He's always present to watch and oversee the consultation, and you'll see Eshu there in that diagram. Osun is very important. Osun represents the staff of Orumila, the staff of Odudua and Obatala as well. Osun represents the vital energy, the vital force that resides with the person while they're alive. That's why Osun must always be erect, must always be standing upright, and is there to protect the Babalao's health and vitality when he's, dealing with consultation, perhaps with somebody who's might be ill or might be possessed or what have you. And it goes to, let's say that Ifa covers one of the wonderful things about Ifa is that it's immense wisdom and breadth and depth. Ifa can speak to any number of situations. So Ifa will determine, for instance, in the case of a person coming for divination, if the problems they're facing are health related, meaning because they're human and they get sick, or if they're the product of witchcraft or the product of dark spirit. But not every situation that a babalao faces or everybody a problematic that a person faces is because of witchcraft. Nor is every situation that a person faces a question of health. I've had people over the years that Ifas consulted, we've consulted them, and they've been hospitalized for like 10 times. And the hospital saying, look, we don't know what's going on. The person's throwing up repeatedly, but all the tests are coming out normal. And then, doctors are getting desperate, say, well, if this persists, we're going to have to take out a part of your bowel or do something to intervene. And in which case they've come to Ifa, and Ifa has, in some cases, said what you have has nothing to do with really illness or the spirit of illness or physical illness. It has to do with spiritual attack. And having done a Bo, the person goes back to the doctor, their symptoms go away, and they basically go on to live a normal life. Vice versa, people that are suffering illness where the doctors can't quite pinpoint where the problem is, where Ifa has, because of so many years and so much accumulation of data, can pinpoint where the person's problem may be, therefore sending them back to the medical profession, but with having done EBO to help open the eyes of the doctors and be able to help the patient. Ifa will talk about, again, issues of witchcraft, issues of family dynamics, law. It basically, that's why it is in its totality, it is a system that can speak to every aspect of the human experience, both past, present, and future, and an ancient, but also in a modern context. So those are some of the things, the tools that basically help the Babalao to basically carry out his work and his job. The Uiroke is, again, an item which is used to basically, when we do the yuba, we're praying to accompany and to be the voice of Eshu, to basically say, come forth, spirit, come forth, Orisha, come forth, healing, come forth, Odu Ifa, to have the, to make the medicine or incantation to work and to help the individual with their problem or situation. And it's also where we use the tap or to include ingredients into a particular working EBO or consultation as well. So, and the Awo Ifa is just basically the doctor's home. Doctor will travel, the house call. So when a babalao goes out, he puts all those items into in Apo, which is a stylized bag, which is basically in order if he has to travel or make a house call for somebody. But that gives you at least an idea of the tools of Ifa. Again, the breadth of Ifa in terms of the different facets that it handles, the different facets that it deals with, and its relevance in different situations and aspects of a person or a community or a person's life in ancient times, and still today in Benin, for instance, and in Nigeria. Any king, any person who will take on the role of being an Oba or have any high rank like Araba, Akodawa, any high rank of Babalao or spiritual or political rank within the Ifa tradition, both in Benin, will always go through divination. And the divination will be done to see if that person's destiny is in alignment with the position or the responsibilities they wish to take up. And if there's the right candidate, what ebos need to do or appeasement in that, so the person can properly carry out their responsibilities and their duties. So today, for instance, the Alafin had passed away a few years ago, and they were still doing divination and trying to narrow down the candidates to become the new Alafin, which is the sort of the emperor that sits in Oyo, a descendant of Shango and Oramian. And that was done, until divination was done to determine who the right person was to occupy that royal chair and that important spiritual seat. They were basically, the seat remained vacant until the right candidate had been approved by Ifa. So it's still very relevant in definitely West Africa, and again, and people that I've consulted, people of every nationality, race, spiritual background, even other faiths come many times to Ifa for guidance, because they're dealing with real world issues, the same way a person would go to a doctor or a naturopath, and because they're facing problems they can't explain or they're not getting answers for, they go to the Babalao and all that to receive that guidance and Ifa's guidance to see, okay, how can I solve this problem, right? So, any
Well,
questions?
I think we have one question in the back, and we'll probably have to stop after that, unfortunately,
No
because
problem.
we're gonna run out of time.
I
So
apologize if I've gone over.
no, 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 no. We're still within time, and this is important.
I was just gonna ask, you said that multiple people from different traditions can come to the Balabalawe and they can still help. So there's no monopoly on the truth, and like, can these deities affect me? Like, even if I'm not somebody who follows the tradition, is it these deities that are affecting me, or is it my own deities that are affecting me? Like, what's at play here?
That's an excellent question. That's an excellent question. I'll try to be brief because I don't want to completely mess up your day in terms of timing. But so a lot of it depends on the Babalao and their background and everything else. In terms of my own practice, I've taken a very universal view of Ifa, looking at Ifa's trajectory through different cultures, different places and so forth. And when I consult Ifa, I look to the Odu of Ifa to give me guidance in terms of and we've talked about this, funny enough, with Professor. We look at for the spiritual archetype, or in terms of the energy, the element, the type of consciousness that is affecting the individual. So, if the person comes from for instance, another belief system, sometimes the Orisha doesn't matter because unbeknownst to that individual, their background, their roots extend ancestrally and either through DNA or through spiritual court and everything else to spirits that had the name, or they're in the lifetime they were on Earth, were associated with the Orishas as they're named in Nigeria, or as the Vodun that are named in Benin. In other cases, they may be archetypes, which associate with the same energy being called forth, but where you are prescribing ebo or appeasement, the type of appeasement, but basically saying we're going to honor both the Orisha that is similar to that energy, but also in your own tradition, you should do X, Y, Z, or consult what is the best way to propitiate that particular energy. The thing is that in the spirit world, Ifa has vision into every spiritual system, every type of spirit. I mean, First Nations, Hindu, Islamic, pre-Islamic, Judaic. It extends through every culture, as long as you go beyond just the wrapping or the general envelope of the cultural aspect, like I was just calling Shango, and not calling it something else in that other culture, right? Or basically being able to extend or go beyond that, but the message, the problematic, and the resolution uh, can be uttered by Ifa. And I've had, again, Hindu, Muslim, evangelical, you name it. And Ifa has always been able to deal with each and every one of those situations. And it's the same thing in Nigeria. Many times a Christian or Islam, a person may profess Islam or Christianity or some other belief system, but when they're in trouble, like same way you go to the doctor, you go to the Babalao or the Orisha if they're doing Edi di Logun, to ascertain what is the advice or the solution to a problem, right?
So yeah, they might tell you, like I've seen cases of this in Nigeria and also in diaspora where they'll say, oh, yeah, well, we're talking about this Orisha, but because you're Christian, it's actually, you know, the example of Shango. I know Babalawo would say, oh, Shango takes the form of Thor in the Nordic cosmology, takes the
Exactly.
form of Zeus in the ancient Greek cosmology. For Christians, it could be Saint Barbara or Saint Michael. So you need to invoke the intercession of these particular spiritual entities from your own tradition. And I've done some work on one Odu Otuameji, which is associated with Islam. When it's divine for people, oftentimes at birth, it's like, oh, this child is supposed to either be Muslim or be involved in Islam to one degree or the other. I know a pastor in Nigeria whose father was a Babalawo. They did the ritual, Esentai is what they call it, like the divination to know the child's Ori, right, what the child is bringing into the world. So, oh, your child's supposed to be a pastor, right? So Ifa doesn't have confessional boundaries. Everybody is free to come, and the message that it provides can be, I don't want to say translated, but articulated through multiple different traditions. And very good Babalawo are experts in it. That's why I think Baba he's so familiar with different religious systems, is able to give you Ifa's message in a way that fits whatever cosmology it is that you have. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we can talk about this.
And again, human beings, remember, are the role of the elements in the Orisha and in the Odus of Ifa are critical, because all earthly existence is a combination of various elements, and the elements are the solution associated, and the spirits associated with those elements, and also spiritual archetypes affect you no matter what what culture, what ethnic expression you profess, right?
Well, please join me in thanking Baba for coming to speak with us and sharing his wealth of wisdom and experience. And if you have other questions, please feel free to send them to me. But yeah, please join me in thanking him for sharing this class with us.
Aburuboye, many blessings to all of you, and I wish you luck in your studies, and I applaud your interest, and I hope that this class and this course with Professor Gunake helps you to have a greater appreciation for one of a patrimony of humanity, one of the oldest belief systems in the world, and that's still living and breathing and helping in different societies. So many blessings and greetings from Ontario.
Ashego.
Oh shit.
So I'll download the recording and then make sure I get it to you later today.
Ashe, Ashe. Thank you very much for your attention, and have a wonderful day.
Okay, Ashego.
Ashe, bye-bye.